And then you can go whenever you want, Alyssa.
Thanks, Melissa. Welcome, everyone, to the March 23rd meeting of the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee. Notice this meeting may involve the remote participation by members, either by telephone or other electronic means, due to the local public health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota State Statutes, Section 14D.021. Welcome, everybody, on this kind of snowy Wednesday. Let's start with calling the roll. If I could turn it over to Millicent for that.
Aaron?
Here.
Adrian?
Here.
Armand?
Here.
Bree? Bree? Dan Booty?
Here.
Dan Miller?
Here.
Deanna Newman?
Here.
Alyssa?
Here.
Georgiana? Georgiana? Greg? Heather?
Here.
Tyler? Janice?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Jesse?
Here.
Joey? Carl? Jordan?
Present.
Cadence?
Here.
Jeremy? Jeremy? You can say you're here. You're on mute. I have to hear it.
Sorry, here. Sorry.
Great. That's okay. Marty? Matthew? Is he attending this one? Matthew Hendricks? No. Maya?
Here.
Natalie? Philip?
Here.
Steve?
I'm here.
Tom? Ben? Ben, are you here? I see you. Okay. And Chris Kartheiser?
Here.
And Millicent Flowers, I am here. We have 20 in attendance. Is there anyone else who'd like to be included in the roll call? All right, we have 20 present.
Thank you, Melissa, for calling the roll. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and accept the minutes for the February Bicycle Advisory Committee meeting.
I would so move, Philip.
Thanks, Philip. Looking for a second?
I'll second that. This is Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Any discussion on the agenda or the minutes? Dan, I see your hand is up. Dan Miller.
Yeah, I'd like to just add something at the end of the discussion, if there's time, to talk about some issues that have been brought before me, and just to report about a few things I've seen, which are positive, and that, if that's possible, or do you want to just do it in announcements?
You know, I think if we do that during we have plenty of time in the agenda today for once. What a luxury. I think if we do that after, I want to make sure that you get through the engineering subcommittee report. So maybe we'll just talk about that during announcements and plan for a little bit more time during the announcements portion of the meeting. Does that sound okay?
Very good. Yep.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking, it reminds me, I had a question about infrastructure, sort of tracking of dollars. So maybe an item that we can just touch on and then discuss at one of the subcommittees or executive committees. So put that on the agenda. Brief.
That sounds good. We can chat a little bit more about it at the end if we need more discussion to figure out where that lives.
Yeah.
All right, not seeing any other hands up or folks coming off mute, I would ask Millicent to call the roll on approving the agenda and the February minutes.
Aaron, excuse me, Aaron,
Aye.
Adrian,
Aye.
Armand,
Aye.
Dan Booty,
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
Anna,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Janet.
Did you say Janice?
I said Janice, yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, yes.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Jordan. Jordan,
Aye. Aye.
Cadence,
Aye.
I
Jeremy,
think Jeremy can't vote until June, so
Yes.
thank you, Jeremy. We will look forward
Sorry
to your
about
vote at future meetings.
sorry, Maya,
Aye.
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Alyssa.
I will vote aye. Thanks, Millicent.
Okay, 16 voted yes. Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. As I said, I'm very excited that we have like a luxury of time today. We'll endeavor not to fill it all just for the sake of filling it all. But it is nice to have a little bit of space. First on the agenda for discussion is member appointments. I think Chris is probably going to follow up on the email that he sent all of us yesterday.
Yeah, just a quick one. I sent an email yesterday, actually a couple. I always get the BAC and the PAC confused because they do their member appointments on different, half of the PAC is up each year. But all of the BAC ward members are up for reappointment this year. So I've heard from at least one person who's not coming back. Let me know if you make the decision that you're not. We'll have some time at the end of the term to recognize everybody in the time they've put in for sure. But also, if you have any questions, reach out to me. The deadline is April 15th, which is a Friday. So if you're looking to come back, just make sure you get your application in by then.
Thanks, Chris. And definitely, I know we've been encouraging folks to reach out to their appointing council member if they're interested in reappointment. If you don't already have a relationship with those folks, definitely continue to encourage that. And then also, it is really helpful if you are deciding to put your time and energy towards other things, to also let Chris know, like he said, because those of us who are remaining, or even folks who are leaving, sometimes do some recruitment to fill those open seats. And so it is helpful if we know before the April 15th deadline, so we can encourage other folks to get on the committee, because we know that not everybody is going to always want to recommit to 2 years of a lot of volunteer time for the city. So, but I would be excited to continue to work with all of you. Anyone else want to say anything about member appointments? I think Chris and I kind of have the basics covered, but if anybody who has reapplied multiple times has anything else to add, would be happy to give you a minute to talk. All right, not seeing anybody. I'm going to move on. Thanks, everyone. The next item for Dan, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, we've been through 2 years of this pandemic and 2 years of virtual meetings and everything else. And many kudos to everybody that has hung through this and been part of it. It's been a great time, and I think we've done some really good work. You know, we've gone through a lot of changes, personnel changes in you know, government and to our staff. So I think a thought to keep in mind is that it's always good to have a blend of experience as well as new voices. And whatever you're deciding, I mean, I know that the work is not done, and that's something that motivates me. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you adding that. Cool. All right. Speaking of blend of new perspectives and experienced perspectives, the next item on the agenda is the annual report to council. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and just to kind of like contextualize and cue up the conversation. And then this is really like an open forum for me to get feedback from all of you, because I am the person who has to do the annual report to council on behalf of our committee. So I think we've mentioned this in other meetings, but just a little bit of grounding context. So, you know, we as a committee exist because at some point there was an enabling resolution that passed City Council that said, put into existence this committee, and here's its responsibilities. And in that enabling resolution, one of the responsibilities or charges for the committee was to come back to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, it is now, and give an annual report on our work. That annual report has looked a lot of different ways. It's evolved a lot over the years. For a long time, the Bicycle Advisory Committee did its own report and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee did its own report. In recent years, we've done a joint report together because they also have that requirement. And there's a lot of overlap between the concerns of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the concerns of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. So that's been a really nice joint effort, a way for our committees to collaborate and stay more in touch on you know, the priorities of the PAC and the BAC. It's also evolved in terms of focus and tone. I think when it was first envisioned, and for many years, it was really an opportunity for all of us to celebrate with the council some of our achievements. There's been a lot of achievements over the last decade or so. And especially last year, it was both an opportunity to celebrate and also, I think, a significant challenge to council to say, you know, we've done a lot of really, really great things, and also we need to do a lot more and we need to do it a lot faster, right? So that was a little bit of a shift in tone last year. You know, there were a lot of content things that we focused on. A couple of the things that are top of mind for me as we think about bringing the concerns of the committee to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of Council, which is 6 folks, 5 of whom are new to City Council, is, you know, filling those folks in on some of the history of what we've done, making sure they're familiar with who we are, thinking about some of the major priorities that we've discussed as a group this year. And so just want to have a group brainstorming discussion about, you know, what do we want to communicate? What do we think is really important for that committee, who is, you know, the one who approves all of the projects we review, all of the policies we review, and making sure that we're, you know, the messaging that I am giving on behalf of the committee aligns with what we all are thinking. So, Janice, did you want to add more context, or are you jumping in with brainstorming?
Actually, excited about, well, I was going to say something and ask a question. So I was going to ask whether it was going to be in person this year. And just mention that in the past, when it has been in person, I've gone, well, we've been encouraged as members to kind of offer moral support and to come. And there's always been a few of us, and I've gone a few times, and I have to say, when I have come, you know, it's been really appreciated by the council. So I guess then now my question, is it going to be in person this year?
Mm-hmm. The answer is like 65% probably. And also that doesn't mean that our presentation will be in person. So Chris can talk about this a little bit.
They might be in person, but might be in person, but
presenters might still be remote. But it's unclear, I think, a little bit how that applies to us as a board and commission. So Chris, I don't know if you want to say any more of that. This is discussion item. The next discussion item on the agenda is meeting format. And so we're going to be talking about that in depth, but maybe we should just talk about it now since it's relevant to this.
I think that was a good overview as far as whether or not this one will be in person. I think there's an upcoming PWI meeting that has the potential to be in person. So if that one is, I think we would know in advance, but I might be wrong. Maybe this is the first one. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, there's a chance, like Alyssa said. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, and I should say we are tentatively scheduled right now, assuming we meet all of the 11 pre-checklist milestones, to be at the PW&I committee on the April 21st meeting. So it'll be about a month from now.
Yeah, so I guess I just wanted, if it is in person, I wanted to encourage people to go if they could make it.
I appreciate that. I went several times before I had to present, and it was really fun and nice to see people, and yeah, interesting to, if you've never been to it used to be TMPW, but now it's PW&I. If you've never been to the Public Works and Infrastructure meetings, they're really interesting. So for our kind of crowd. Cool. So I think that's like the kind of the high level of context I would give. At this point, I can share some high level thoughts about, what am I thinking based on the major themes that we've had as a committee over the last year, what appears to me to have come up over and over again, but would really love to hear from other folks, what you think is important to communicate to council, what's on your mind, what do you feel like are big successes from the last year have been, big challenges from the last year. It's, yeah, like I said, an opportunity to celebrate, also an opportunity to be very clear about where things can be done better. So, Dan Miller.
Yeah, it may be worth when you put it together to touch on our CIP requests and just the things we touched on there.
I'm just taking some notes. I know this meeting is recorded, but it won't be available for a while. Philip?
I think for me, two things, two possible messages or concerns jump to my mind. One is that, certainly, I'm sure, Alyssa, in your comments, you'll talk about our sort of foundational documents, such as the climate emergency you mentioned. But I think it just repeats. It's worth repeating that this decade of the 2020s is truly the sort of last chance to make major progress and reduction in CO2 to avoid the worst of climate change impacts. So it's not, because I still think some people, and I really don't know the new council, but I think it's possible that some people are still thinking, well, we've got, if we don't get around to it this decade, we'll sort of get around to it next decade. And it's like, the 2030s is going to be much more about resilience as opposed to mitigation of climate impact. So that would be one consideration for you to mention. The other one is I don't know, maybe a little more dicey and imprecise. But if we were talking about sort of multimodal transportation and the region or the season, we were talking about induced travel and the really good research over the past 20 years that shows that if you make it easier to drive, people will drive. If you spend more money on roads, we do induce more people to drive. And so but it's sort of a tough love message to, I would say, expose what I think is the reality for us on the commission, which is to a certain extent, we don't want to make it easier to drive. We obviously want people to be able to drive. We know a lot of economic, social activity happens because of driving, but we also are, part of our business, I feel, is to make the alternative to driving easier, more pleasant, the easiest first choice. But it's also, we talk about this, making it a little harder to drive. So the sort of the bloodless way to talk about that is that you can spend a phenomenal amount of money and people will continue to drive and drive more and even drive more until you bulldoze the entire, city. So I don't know, that's a little rambly there, but that would be just one point approach, something to touch on, if that seems appropriate. But again, you know the audience, Alyssa, much better than I do, so. I trust you.
We're all learning the audience, right? There's a bunch of new council members. There's a new director of public works. So there will be a certain amount of unknown, I think, for all of us. But I think I largely One of the things, Philip, that comes to mind based on what you're saying is this this thing I like to talk about of the false equivalency, right? We're like worried about delaying drivers 30 seconds, and then there's like the cost is more people are seriously hurt or killed while walking or biking, right? And so we talk about those like they're the same, right? The manuals that they have. When we think about like why there can't be improvements made on Lyndale right away, say that like, well, until you have a certain amount of human cost, then the time cost isn't worth it. And I think there is that false equivalency that is worth pointing out.
Excellent, yeah.
I think I see Janice's hand up.
Yeah, and since you said so many of the people on this committee are new, I just wanted to second you on your, I think you should give some background on the committee and explain who we are to them. You said you were going to do that. I think that's a great idea. And as we're talking about the importance of dealing with climate change, I mean, I don't know if you want to specifically talk about Hennepin Avenue, but that's really key. I mean, here the city council, the staff have come up with a really good plan that promotes transit and biking and less car use. And this council is probably under tremendous pressure not to accept that plan. So I don't know whether it's worth calling out. I think probably is worth mentioning specifically how important Hennepin Avenue is and the current plan.
Thanks. And I think we still don't know about a vote timing on the Hennepin Avenue project. My understanding is sometime in April to early May. So there'll be a little bit of this presentation might be right after it or it might be right before it. So in either case, I'm sure there will be things we could say about Hennepin Avenue. Sorry, I'm getting my chat list up. Someone's got their hand up. Deanna?
Yeah, it's me. I don't know all of our audience, but I do happen to know the one that I'm supposed to know. And so I guess my feeling is that part of what we need to say is that although we are the Bicycle Advisory Committee, we aren't a bunch of rabid bicyclists only advocating for ourselves, but that we actually are thinking about a more holistic picture. A picture that does deal with climate and with safety of all multimodal. That really our issue is not making more bike lanes just so that we would have bike lanes to run around. And I just say that from another perspective, that it's worth emphasizing that.
Mm-hmm. Deanna, can I ask, are there particularly, so you mentioned climate, are there other sort of values, things that you have in mind? That, when you're thinking about that idea, we're not just advocating for ourselves?
Well, I mean, and you brought it up too, right? With it, when we make it easier for cars to go faster, we then create safety issues for pedestrians and bikes also. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why making the city more multimodal, more attractive to those people who are not in cars. I think that is good. It's good for the city. It's good for our economy. It's good for businesses. There's a lot of benefits to this besides just putting in more bike lanes.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I see Dan Miller again, and then Dan Booty.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Deanna said, I think you may be able to work in that bikes are a business generator, and that's going to help us get back to the new normal. And we should be doing what we can do to encourage people to do alternative means besides an automobile. The other thing I wanted to mention was it's the April 15th, I think, was when you're planning to be there. Or is it the 21st?
The 21st. Okay,
so it's a week after the deadline for the things to apply for the BAC, and we may have candidates in each of those things. We may not, but it may be worthwhile to point out that as a representative of the BAC and a ward appointee, it's important that your ward is recognized, and that and that your appointee is a partner with you and is a worthwhile person to bounce ideas off of and to get involved with issues that are affecting their ward as well as the city. Thanks.
By the way, Alyssa, great earrings.
Thank you. They're very cheerful on days like today. So thanks, Dan. Yes, Dan Booty.
Yeah, piggybacking off of Deanna on two things. Also, I was going to say nice earrings. And the other thing is to her comment about safety, it's worth emphasizing that slowing traffic down is safer for all users, including vehicles. So it's not just, I mean, obviously we're focusing on bicycles, pedestrians, and people rolling, but changing things to benefit bicyclists and pedestrians also benefits the safety of vehicle drivers. So, you know, anything that increases speed is unsafe for everybody, not just bicyclists.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's a great ad. Cadence.
Yes, also piggyback off of Deanna and kind of weaving what other folks have said, just being careful in the language and like the wording and the framework that like people who drive cars, it's not a zero-sum game and they're not losing anything in particular when more infrastructure is actually balanced in a more equitable way for people who are biking and walking, and that, you know, for folks who truly do rely for all sorts of mobility needs or lifestyle needs for vehicles, it actually alleviates traffic for those for whom transit and biking and walking are never going to be able to fulfill their mobility needs. And so like really making sure that, you know, all of the languages that this is mutually beneficial for everyone. Because I honestly get really tired of the bad faith arguments from folks who aren't disabled arguing on behalf of disabled people and that they need to drive. And then when I talk to people, a lot of disabled folks are like, actually, I take transit, or I don't have a car, I can't afford a car. So like transit improvements would actually be the best for me. So I really dislike when folks use other identities that they don't personally share in to make bad faith arguments on their behalf that are actually not in line with, you know, what folks would want and would need if we actually talked directly to them. So that's my little soapbox moment, and then I'll pass to the next speaker.
Thanks, Cadence. I don't see anybody else currently with hands up. We probably have another 5-ish minutes we could spend on this if folks have other ideas, or even like it would be helpful if anybody wants to like, you know, +1 anything that's already been shared. I've appreciated when folks do that as well. You know, we'll have probably 15 minutes to talk about a whole year's worth of work. And so, you know, we'll do our best to incorporate as much of this as possible, and also still only have 15 minutes, which is a challenge. But so I'll just give it one more awkwardly long pause to see if anybody wants to raise their hand after Phil.
Okay, well, I was just thinking in terms of the sort of bigger picture. I think it's really worth saying that this is a high-functioning, collaborative commission where great participation in every meeting, and I guess we'll know whether there are only maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people out of 28 who are not reapplying. So I think a message of this is not just yet sort of another sort of city commission. It's a commission that works together well, loves its work, does a lot of work. Yeah, I think we can just really take pride in what we do and show that it's a commission that has a lot of support among us all. It's just not always the case. I mean, I think some commissions you have a fair amount of turnover every time, and it appears we're not going to have that this time. So that's great in terms of application. So.
Thanks, Bill. Cadence, some more things to add?
Yeah, this is, and maybe it's out of the scope, so if anyone disagrees with me, please let me know. But also just like, there are very tremendously scary things happening in the world right now. And like we are witnessing in real time, like how our foreign policy and what we do and don't do and what we can do and can't do really greatly impacts like other people's ability to live right now. And if I, could be more specific, there is a war happening. There are multiple wars happening right now, but there is a war happening in Ukraine, right? And something like $1 billion goes to the Russian state every single day from oil. And we know that oil prices here have already shifted upward, even though the supply hasn't gone down. And so like we have a responsibility to explore how transportation plays a role in this, right? Like if you want to be anti-war, then that also means that we have to consider like our impact and participation in a global economy. And so like, such is that in a way, like our lifestyles are dependent on this. And if we can make our lifestyles less dependent upon oil, whether that's domestic production or importation of internationally sourced oil, like that's also good policy at a lot of different levels of government. And so that is something to like, we might feel like we're only like one small unit of being and that like we can't impact these things that are happening on a global scale, but we can in a small way. It's just we all have like a piece of it to kind of unravel and work together to make something better. So
thanks, Cadence. And I think the world in which we live in is always relevant to this discussion. I don't think we can have a context about like biking and being in public space and living in community and living in part of a government without also thinking about all those things. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Jesse, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I don't know if this idea carries merit or not, but like what I was thinking about is like having like maybe a stat or two of the BAC members, and potentially, something like what percentage of the members have a driver's license. Not that it's like a qualifying factor for anything, but like that we are like, we there's a lot of us who do drive as well and are really trying to actively change like our nature of having to drive to places. Just a kind of a thought I'd want to throw out there, because I don't know, I would guess that at least like probably 50% of the committee has a driver's license, but we're all actively trying to make biking better, and sometimes that requires sacrifices of like less convenient car travel.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. I think that's like a really interesting frame to think about how we tie who we are to some of the things that Deanna brought up around like we're not just here to like advocate for more bike lanes for no reason. We're people who live here and we want it to be better for everyone. Cool. All right. I think we are close to the end of what I would want to have for discussion time on this agenda, because I want to make sure Chris has a few minutes to talk about meeting format and that we can go through the engineering subcommittee report. So thank you, everybody. I have a page and a half of really great notes. I'm really excited to work with Abigail Johnson on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee to pull together as much of this as we can into a 15-minute, very efficient presentation, and look forward to sharing how that went with you all at our April Bicycle Advisory Committee meeting, since it will happen, I think, before then. So Yeah, thank you. Thank you all again. This was a really great discussion. There were lots of nuances that you all teased out that I'm really excited to explore more. So with that, I will move us on to our next discussion item, which is Chris talking about meeting format.
Yeah, another quick update here, and unfortunately nothing super concrete. Basically, we're kind of on standby to go back to in-person. They'll be bringing the council meetings back in person first. So whenever that does happen, if it is for that April 21st one, that'll be kind of a signal that it'll be coming somewhat soon for us. We still don't know like an exact timeline from that, what it means, but I would say we're probably looking at May being like a fairly decent likelihood of being in person. I don't think any of the April meetings would be. There's a chance. And then as we get further into the summer, assuming nothing changes, I would say June, there's pretty high likelihood that we'll be back in person then. And so just so folks know, I've talked about this before, but Janice, you got a question? You want to jump in?
When you say we, you're talking about the BAC?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're talking about in-person BAC meetings possibly in May and definitely in June?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying. So yeah, all meetings, the full meeting as well as the subcommittee meetings. You may remember that a state law was passed, I don't know, sometime last year that essentially makes it very hard for us to do any sort of online meeting. So everyone will need to attend in person. There are a few exemptions to that. For like medical reasons, you can have like 3 virtual meetings a year or something like that. But even those might be hard depending on the setting that we're in and things like that. So I would say for the most part, it'll be functioning the way it was before. We'll be back to just regular in-person meetings. The full meetings, I think, will be in the new building. The conference rooms on the first floor are some pretty nice big open spaces. So we can kind of take advantage of space there for the full meetings in terms of kind of figuring out everyone's comfort level with how close to be and things like that, you know, especially for those first meetings. And then the subcommittees we have to figure out. We might have some rooms in the new building, or we might still be in City Hall like we were before for those. So we'll give more information on that when it comes. I think that's everything I've got. Happy to answer any questions ambiguously, most likely, but if you have any, I'll give it a shot.
Chris, I'll just add one thing, which is that Chris and I have been in conversation to try to determine what, if any, additional latitude we as a committee have to decide what the expectations might be for our group meeting in person. My understanding at this point is that if the city doesn't have a mask mandate, the BAC could not have a mask mandate. If the city does have a mask mandate, the BAC is mandated to be masked. So I guess I'll just put that out there as a question. Certainly we can have a discussion as a group about what our hoped for norms are and how we are, you know, doing our best to protect each other and take care of each other and make folks as comfortable as possible with the idea of returning to in-person. But I do not know currently that I would have, for example, the power as committee chair to say everyone who attends our meetings must be masked. So I'll just make that a little more explicit that, well, we're also having that conversation as we think about this return to in-person and figuring out what is the clerk's office going to say. So. Long, awkward pause. All right, not seeing any raised hands or folks coming off mute. I know it's a big change for us to contemplate as a committee, just like going totally virtual 2 years ago with an unseen end date was a really big change for us to contemplate. So do really want to encourage folks, if you have any questions, concerns, things you want to raise, please feel free to email, text, call me. We can talk through those and figure out, you know, what can we do and what can't we do, and make sure you all have the information that you need to make the decisions that you feel like will keep you safe. So that's what I got on meeting format. We went from extremely high level to extremely detailed, and now we're going to go back to the middle, a little bit of both with the engineering subcommittee report. So I will turn it over to Dan, and I think, is Marty here today? I can't remember if they were called in roll, but. Oh, probably not, because the teachers are on strike.
Yeah.
Just connecting all the dots. So Dan, take it away.
Okay. Yes, we had only one item that came before the engineering subcommittee, and Millicent, if you can pull up the Metro Beeline route there, the illustration, that would be helpful. Thank you. Anyways, we had one item, and the presenters were Jasna Hadzik-Stanek from Minneapolis Public Works, Cody Olson from Metro Transit, and Chad Alos from Hennepin County. So this project is it's going to be installed in 2023, and as you can see, it goes from West Lake Street on the left side of the illustration all the way to downtown St. Paul. And what we discussed at the meeting was the Minneapolis part between West Lake Street and the river. So this is a Beeline presentation, but it's being coordinated with Hennepin County and Minneapolis. And it's going to be adding bidirectional dedicated bus lanes that have a red pavement marking, primarily between Dean Parkway and to the river. And that's about 6 miles of route that's going to be marked or using shared lanes. The project presentation, and you'll find these materials in the agenda, is quite a lengthy item, and it's if you're interested in further reviewing this is a worthy thing to take a look at. But the project presentation by Hennepin County was included 10% design level striping, 10% level design striping concept, and we've got a number of shots here that we could go through, but I'm going to try to get through my presentation first, and then we can have a little bit of discussion, and maybe some of the members that attended can point things out, and we can talk about specific slides on this. This is a 40-page presentation, so it's fairly deep. So anyways, if we have in this thing both dedicated red marked lanes, as well as areas where it will be a shared lane with 2 lanes of traffic each way, and it goes back and forth. However, during the interesting thing is that a fair amount of it is going to be converted to a 4-to-3 conversion with a striping plan. So that's very exciting to see. In 2008, there was a reconstruction between DuPont Avenue to the river. And so this project will not be going through any changes behind the curbs. The curbs stay, and it's working within the curbs. The on-street parking will remain, and going through this thing, it's remarkable to see the amount of parking that you just don't think about when you're there, but there's a lot of it. A lot of it is bookended by bump outs, and they're planning to do some more bump outs where they can. And all above curb AAA facility between Minnehaha and the river is not being considered because it's not a reconstruction where it would be located above curb. So this is kind of a repaving project, and if they deemed if you were going to put in a bike facility, something would have to give, and it would likely be the dedicated bus lane that's between Minnehaha and the river. There were signal improvements and additional bump outs that are being considered. Community engagement on the Beeline occurred in 2019 and 20, and construction begins 2023. Service begins in 2024, and the Beeline will be a 24/7 day service. what kind of struck me as a little odd about this was the B-line is being was going to be presented to the Public Works and Infrastructure this month and City Council shortly thereafter. So this is a lot of information to take place, and we're seeing a 10% drawing, and we really didn't touch a lot on pedestrian improvements. You just couldn't see much that's going on, and you would hope that some of that would be involved in a restriping project. So the comments that I heard and wrote down was we're all supportive of the B-line BRT on Lake Street. We'd like to see a need to reduce crossing distances and improve safety in congested areas. Several have between 4 to 8 lane configurations. Then the BRT is well-meaning. It may make crossing Lake in congested environments even more hostile. So we question why some of the sections did not have pavement BRT lanes, why it didn't flow continuously. Instead, sometimes it's being looked upon as being a general purpose lane, a double general purpose lane. And they have a number of these areas are still under consideration, but they felt that this was a better plan to allow those areas to be 2 lanes instead of a dedicated lane. And we brought up the need to improve crossings at intersecting AAA network streets with bump outs and conflict zone markings, and to improve bike parking along Lake Street. So with that, I'd like to see if there's any comments from the group about that attended the engineering meeting, if they would like to just weigh in, and afterwards we'll get to a resolution that I kind of drafted, and several members provided input, and thank you for those people that did that. So I see the group of dots. All right. So,
Dan, can I just jump in? I think the only thing I would add, unless you plan to speak to it, is sort of some of the things Yasna said towards the end of the meeting about council approval and it being a receive and file. Did you want to speak to that, or should I?
Go ahead.
So the presentation team basically noted that, I don't know if you would just call it like a courtesy, but City Council is going to be, this is kind of a follow-up to a request to explore the more space for the bus lanes on Lake Street. And so City Council isn't going to be the group to take significant action on this because it's a county road. And so as we think about, who is the audience for a resolution, I think obviously City Council is important, but thinking about other jurisdictions like Metro Transit and Hennepin County as equally important, if not more important, audiences in this particular instance. So I know they're not part of our normal sort of resolution distribution, but certainly if we have a resolution, I would be happy to distribute it to other audiences if the committee feels that's appropriate.
Thank you. Janice? You might be.
Yeah. I'm trying to unmute. I was just going to say maybe well, obviously people have other things to say. We should hear them first. But I was going to say, if you cut to the resolution, then that might be a subject for discussion because that has a lot of our concerns in it.
Yeah. Okay. And Deanna?
I was just going to say that I was fascinated that they brought this to us and it had no bike lanes in it. It's going back to my earlier comment that it wasn't about the bike lanes and that they wanted a resolution from us, even though, it had no bike lanes on it, that it's really about us supporting the overall vision.
And I'll just say I'm glad to see them back. So I don't think they came to visit the committee. It was in the fall initially, I think. And that was at my request because they at that time didn't see that it was terribly relevant for us to receive a presentation on this. So I'm really glad that they came to join us initially, and also like have received the message that it is important for us to be involved in projects where there might be future bike facilities, but also for the reasons that Deanna just said. So.
Adrian?
Yeah, I had one other thing I wanted to add potentially to the draft resolution. So I don't know if now's the time to talk about that or later.
I have a question to ask Chris, and as far as procedure, and this is a fairly lengthy resolution, and I'm wondering if I can just break this down by the first paragraph and then go point by point through it, and then the last paragraph, if we can have discussion points like that, or would the group rather to just do the whole thing and go at it?
I think we do need to read the whole thing in one go for it to be a proper resolution. But we could certainly read it and then reread certain bullet points if those are areas we want to discuss in more depth.
Okay. All right, here we go. The Metro B-Line BRT and Lake Street improvements. The Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee supports a plan for the Metro B-Line on Lake Street that features dedicated bus lanes, a 4-to-3 roadway conversion, and additional safety enhancements that include improved signals, crossings, and bump outs. The concept presented was listed as a preliminary 10% design level and did not yet show pedestrian safety enhancements. We encourage Metro Transit, Hennepin County, and Minneapolis to return to the BAC during the detailed design phase, and to consider the following recommendations. 1, extend bus lanes west of Hiawatha where 2 general purpose lanes are proposed that BRT will share 1 lane. 2, reduce crossing distances and consider mid-street pedestrian safety medians in congested areas, as well as reducing general purpose lanes at the west end of the project. 3, add leading pedestrian interval signals or a dedicated diagonal pedestrian crossing at all congested intersections. 4, reconsider westbound BRT sharing a single general purpose lane between the river and Hiawatha and adding the AAA network protected 2-way bike lane on the north side. The next one is lower the speed limit on Lake Street to 25 miles per hour or less. Next is add bump outs and conflict zone markings at all ages and abilities intersections. Next is to review Vision Zero traffic safety concerns provided by residents on their comment map. Next is perform a bicycle parking study along Lake Street where block by block bike corrals can be added to on-street parking areas and encouraging access to Lake Street businesses. Next is to coordinate with Metro Transit to improve permanent bike parking adjacent to BRT stops. The last is add block by block e-charging stations. Last paragraph is we also encourage Metro Transit, Hennepin County, and the city of Minneapolis to set a transit travel improvements goals of more than 20% for this corridor. Given that this corridor is overloaded and serves both a disproportionate BIPOC ridership, serves a significant percentage of Metro Transit's overall ridership, and is a significant investment by state legislature specifically for improvement of traffic service, all jurisdictions should target a greater than marginal improvement to transit service. So that's it. Is there a second?
I'll
This is
second.
Aaron.
Deanna.
I'll second. Or Deanna, you can second.
So Adrian had a comment that she wanted to make regarding adding something.
Yeah, actually, now that we've read it out loud, I think it was in relationship to the first bullet point there, the extend the bus lanes west of Hiawatha. And I guess I was confused first about where you're talking about, but it sounds like, am I correct in thinking that you mean in the locations where there are 2 general purpose lanes in in both directions, and in those locations.
Yeah, it's basically wherever they, let's see, I'm sorry, I got to read this thing. So west of Hiawatha, going towards the lakes, there are sections where the bus lane disappears, and it becomes 2 general purpose lanes rather than one drive lane and 1 bus lane. And what I'm trying to say there is to nix the 2 general purpose lanes and just extend the bus lane through that. And you will see that you know, it's in very interesting spots that I'm not sure if we could pull up some different shots of this that kind of highlight that, if that's helpful for people.
Could we word it as extend the bus lanes instead of the 2 proposed general purpose lanes?
Absolutely.
And Dan, did they present a parking study along Lake Street at all?
No. And there was no bike parking study done on Lake Street either when I asked that I went to 2 presentations of this, the BAC and a public one, and I asked the question about bike parking, and I think that's just assumed that parking is staying the way it is along Lake Street as we see it, with the exception of maybe some additional bump outs that would are yet to come that would kind of, you know, expand on an intersection.
And my understanding is that's because the parking is protected between those bump outs because it's not a reconstruction. Yeah. Maybe one thing we could add to that first bullet point then is just to make sure that, I know we're saying west of Hiawatha, if we could just specify maybe at the end of that sentence that it should go all the way to that Westlake station, because right now it completely cuts off at Dean Parkway. But west of there, it still remains to be 2 travel lanes in either direction. But it would make sense to me that we would extend it all the way to the BRT station there.
Okay. Does somebody want to help Millicent with the language there? I don't know if she's catching this stuff. I know that I liked what Dan had mentioned about the language, and as well as what you had mentioned. So could somebody
Can you guys all see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be all the way to the West Lake Street light rail station instead of Dean Parkway.
The comma?
Yeah, comma is fine, I think, and then replace the words where 2 general purpose lanes are proposed and say instead of the proposed 2 general purpose lanes.
Yeah.
And then I think you could probably remove the end of the sentence. I don't know, Dan, what do you think?
I am fine by that.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks good. Thanks. That's all I had.
I think Dan Booty had suggested the word 2 between proposed and general there.
Yes. Thanks, Alyssa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next one down, reduce crossing distances. And
Dan, I see Jeremy Bergerson has a hand up.
I'm sorry, Jeremy.
That's okay, thank you. So in looking at this, I see that there's mention of bump outs and whatnot, but nothing specific to Bryant or 17th or 29th where bike facilities do intersect with Lake Street. Was there any talk about at least getting the county to build some bump outs anything to just slow the traffic and create safer. I know it talks about safe crossings and whatnot. Was it necessary to mention those north-south bike facilities? I wasn't able to go.
Yeah. I'll try to answer that. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the sixth bullet down is add bump outs and conflict zone markings at all ages and abilities intersections. So I think that addresses what you're leading up to. That, in fact, that to me that addresses not only the ones that are on the ground but the ones that are planned. Like I say, when Deanna said it, this was a lot of information about it didn't have a bike lanes, and because there wasn't a lot of discussion about pedestrian improvements and that stuff, I thought it was worth pointing out that this was the stuff we were interested in. And so this is fairly deep, and I think at times, I would ask this group, is it pertinent to keep these things in or out? And that's why I kind of wanted just to go down this list and discuss why they're there and whether they should remain or whether we might delete or modify it, just like the first bullet. So if people would be willing, I'll just start down this list and see if there's any questions that could be answered about them and go from there. The second one is reduce crossing distance and considered mid-street pedestrian safety medians in congested areas, as well as reducing general purpose lanes at the west end of the project. These were comments. This was primarily comments from Janet and Matthew Hendricks, and maybe you'd like to speak to this.
Hi, yeah, this is Matthew. So for the mid-street pedestrian safety medians, I think there may be some opportunities, especially between Hiawatha and the river, where it would make sense to put in something that would take priority over a left turn lane in that location or at specific intersections, and give pedestrians the opportunity to cross one direction of Lake Street traffic and then wait in the middle until it's safe to cross the other direction.
Okay. Janet?
Yeah, and I had talked about the west end because I'm familiar with that end of Lake Street, and it's really wide and the cars go really fast. So that's why I was just saying anything we could suggest to reduce car speeds there would be great.
So Matthew, would you like to propose some different language there instead of congested areas to all along Lake Street, or?
Yeah, I think maybe saying throughout the project rather than in congested areas.
Okay.
Because I think, yeah, there's no place where that would be a bad idea to try, as long as we're talking about a minor street crossing.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. We're going to move on to the next one. Add leading pedestrian interval signals or a leading or dedicated diagonal pedestrian crossing at all congested intersections. So we have some leading pedestrian interval signals, at least in Hennepin, that I noticed this weekend, but I don't know about other areas. And dedicated diagonal pedestrian crossings, I don't believe are in the street design guideline. It's a special signal that allows people to go, diagonally across the thing. But I thought it might be worth, if we have a congested area in the city, this is one of them, that something like that might be worth just posing as something to consider.
I think that's a great idea. I think that should be included. This is Aaron, if that matters. But yeah, I think Lake Street is so wide, even with this change, since we're not actually changing the structure of the road, it's just paint. that a leading pedestrian interval or crossing could be pretty helpful.
Chris?
Yeah, I thought maybe I'd just weigh in on the kind of diagonal, like the all-way crossing. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yep.
So like a pedestrian scramble. So not to say that you can't put this in here, but from my understanding of those, which are really cool. I was actually just in Nashville, and Nashville has a couple of those, and they work really well. They kind of, the places that they work well are where there's a lot of pedestrians, like not just like Lake Street busy a lot, but like really dense downtown kind of urban environments. So I'll just put out, I don't think it's likely that that would be received for a place like this. Not that you can't put it in here and ask for that, but if that's something you all are kind of interested in exploring, I haven't heard you all bring it up before, but there might be other places to kind of push on that. That would be better examples. But again, like, you're welcome to put it in here. I don't think it's a detriment to this resolution by any means, but just throwing that out there.
All right, Phil.
Yeah, I've seen these pedestrian scramble, as you said, Chris. I've seen these intersections work in a city of about 200,000 in a dense sort of commercial mixed or historic downtown, and they work really well. But I would say they really work well. So maybe we add language, dedicated diagonal pedestrian crossing in, heavy pedestrian areas. I would, just to say that, just to signal that we know that you wouldn't put a diagonal pedestrian crossing at just sort of any congestion. I think a little more specific language would be good for throwing that in, but I think it's good signaling to them to think about, like Uptown, east of Hennepin Lake, occurs to me. Yeah.
I feel like that would be a good clarification from a staff perspective, at least.
Yeah. And I think that Lindale, Bloomington.
Yeah, Lindale.
Minnehaha, possibly not Minnehaha, but the street. It's when I was trying to think this stuff through, I was thinking about Lake Street coming back to life and a future of Lake Street beyond 4 to 3. So this is aspirational, and I'm open to however you guys want to put that in there. So if you want to highlight a couple, but I think that Bloomington is definitely a busy intersection, and I'd have to think more about it's not Minnehaha, but the street after that.
I would maybe, I don't know how you feel about this, but similar to kind of how Phil phrased it, if you do after diagonal pedestrian crossing, instead of saying at all congested intersections, just saying at high pedestrian activity intersections or something of the sort.
That's fine. I think that's great.
Yeah. Sure, that's good. Yeah.
Do you want to split those two items? Because leading pedestrian interval signals could be a lot more frequent at congested intersections, and then exploring dedicated diagonal pedestrian crossings could be a separate item. I mean, they're kind of, I would see the frequency being a lot different for those two things.
That's a good clarification, Dan.
Yep, that's good. Yep. Okay, we got the next one here. Reconsider westbound BRT sharing a single general purpose lane between the river and Hiawatha and adding the AAA network protected two-way bike lane on the north side. This is probably the most controversial one and the only one that, well, one other that talks about bikes in this whole thing. But you've got a You got a 10-foot 8 lane with a 2-foot gutter there. That's 12 feet. And this part is on the AAA network, and it was their reasoning for not doing it is because they said there wasn't enough room. And we know that in resurfacing jobs throughout the city where there's a AAA network, we can discuss putting it on the street. So that's why I put it in there.
Dan, this is Matthew Hendricks. I support having this bullet point because these are the blocks that are so rarely heavily congested that I feel the bus lane is not the best use of space in these blocks in particular. There are other blocks where the bus lane is not proposed, where I think it would have a much greater impact in terms of allowing the bus to pass general traffic.
Yeah. In the presentation, they said that the westbound bus traffic is heavier, I believe, and then the eastbound towards the river. The eastbound traffic uses one general purpose lane for the bus and the and driving, and so this would be this point makes it equivalent going both ways and adding a bike lane. Okay. All right, the next item is lower the speed limit on Lake Street to 25 miles per hour or less.
I have a comment on that.
What's that?
This is Jordan. This is Jordan with Hennepin County. I have a comment on that one.
Okay.
So Hennepin County is not legally able to set a speed limit lower than 30 miles an hour. So, you know, again, you can put whatever you want in there, but just being realistic, it's not really an ask that the county can address at this time.
So, Jordan, they could request a traffic study though from the state.
Yeah, that's true. You can request a speed study, but you might not always like the results. You might end up going up rather than down. That's always a risk. So, yeah, I guess I personally wouldn't go that route here, but that is one option.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I agree with you, Jordan. Right now it isn't, and there's it's been a topic on the it's actually going through the state right now with HF 2771 to allow counties to determine speed limits on their roads. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but it was interesting to see that come up in relation to 3 projects that are going on in the county right now with Lowry and Lindale and this thing. Alyssa.
I think I was just going to contextualize what Jordan said. I appreciate the the technical reasons why the thing isn't possible, and also I think it continues to be with this project, like with other things we've commented on, really important for us to ask for what we want, even if it's not technically possible, because part of what makes it become technically possible is demonstrated interest in that thing happening. So I you know, if this is what we want, I would say we should leave it in the motion, even if we know that it's not possible, to say, this is still what we want. You should figure out a way to make it happen.
Alyssa, is it worth saying anything to that effect that we know it's not possible? Like, I don't know, like make it possible to lower the speed limit, you know, better wording, but essentially acknowledging that we know it's not technically possible, but they should push for it.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I'm not sure if Jordan would be able to help wordsmith some language around, you know, push for a policy that would make it possible to lower the speed limit to 25 miles per hour on Lake Street. I don't know if that gets at what Jordan is saying, or if we specifically would want to reference the state legislature or others.
Well, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe if we said something like understanding that currently county roads generally require 30 miles per hour at a minimum. That would be a very neutral way to say we're not idiots here. We know. We're asking, but we know there's a general.
What if we
30
said
mile.
like alter the county minimums to and lower the speed limit on, or something like that? Remove county minimums and lower the speed limit on Lake Street to 25 miles per hour or less. Something like that. I don't know.
I think Jordan is a better person to gauge if that gets at what we need it to get at than I am.
Yeah. Well, it is ultimately the state legislature that gives the county and that gave the city of Minneapolis the authority to set those speed limits. So it would. What you're really asking is for the county to lobby the state legislature for that authority. And it does get a little sticky because there's a lot of counties in Minnesota and a wide variety of opinions. And I think a lot of people prefer not to have that authority because it kind of opens up other questions. So, yeah, so, but I guess I digress. Ultimately, to get there, the county or a coalition of counties would need to lobby for that change to get the authority.
So getting back to what Alyssa said, something to the effect of push for policy changes to allow for the speed limit on Lake Street to be reduced might be to allow for the speed limits on Lake Street to reduced to 25 miles or less. For policy changes, allow for the speed limit on Lake Street to be reduced.
And then this may be too pointed, but I think maybe change that period to a comma and then say, and reduce the speed limit accordingly.
I like that. Is there any more discussion on this one, or can we move on?
I think I will say, if we want to have some space for discussion of several items at the end, we'll want to be, calling the roll on this sometime around 5:30. So if we could bundle a couple of these and have comments on maybe two of them at a time or two or three at a time, that might help us get to a point where we're able to call the roll and have some of that announcements time for discussion later.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay, so the next one is add bump outs and conflict zone markings at all ages and abilities intersections. This is the AAA network going north and south, intersecting with Lake Street. Any thoughts on that one, or are we good? think we're good. Okay, the next one. Review Vision Zero traffic safety concerns provided by residents on their comment map. This is a really cool little map. It's not a complicated thing, but it finally just came out the last month or so, and it allows people to comment on conditions and concerns. And if they haven't seen it, they should look at it. Okay.
Could we just change their comment map to the Vision Zero comment map?
Yes. Yep. All right. We're moving along. Perform a bike parking study along Lake Street where block by block bike corrals can be added to on-street parking areas, encouraging access to Lake Street businesses. Combined with that one is a separate one that's coordinate with Metro Transit to install permanent bike parking adjacent to BRT stations. So one's talking about bike corrals and looking at this immense amount of parking that is staying and saying, you know, take a parking space on each block on each side of the street and turn it into a place where people can bike to Lake Street and do something rather than parking at the parking meter.
Hey, Dan, oh, go ahead.
Phil?
You know, I know that there are parking spots along when East Lake Street was redone between Hiawatha and the river. Yeah. Oh, there were, I think every block does have bike parking already. And frankly, I get there enough. I'm not sure it's needed on the east section of Lake Street, clearly on the west section, but that's just I mean, I know we had this big redo about 3-4 years ago, east part of Lake Street. So I might, if that's true, which I think it is, I might just say west of the bike parking study, west of Hiawatha. But do others have thoughts?
I guess, Philip, I'll just say, you know, if we have 10 to 20% of people biking everywhere, we're going to need more bike parking than we have if we actually meet our goals.
Just to do the part. Okay. Yeah. Leave it then. Yep.
Okay, Armand.
Yeah. Hi, Dan. This is Armand from Metro Transit. I just wanted to note on that second bullet point about bike racks adjacent to BRT stops. I will note that bike racks are a standard amenity as a part of the BRT platform suite of amenities, if you will. So just wanted to note that. I don't know if you want to keep it or just, you know, to keep it just to drive that point home, but just know that there will be some bike racks as a part of that BRT platform.
Any thoughts on that from other folks? Whether it helps to drive the point home or we should scratch it? All right, let's leave it in for the time being. And then the last one is to add block by block e-charging stations. And this was actually meant for bikes, but we could include it for vehicles as well. So we just left it without a. All right.
Dan, it might be worth just saying, I guess specifying, even though I get what you're trying to do with that. Because I kind of forgot about that myself until you just said it.
So you might want to add block by block e-charging stations for
both bicycles and vehicles.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Or e-bike, what did you say, e-bicycles, or is that?
That's good, yeah. E-bikes and vehicles, yeah. All right, we've got a last paragraph here, and that is, we also encourage Metro Transit, Hennepin County, and the city of Minneapolis to set transit travel improvement goals of more than 20% for this corridor. Given that this corridor is overloaded and serves both a disproportionate BIPOC ridership, serves a significant percentage of Metro Transit's overall ridership, and is a significant investment by the state legislature specifically for improvement of transit service. All jurisdictions should target a greater than marginal improvement to transit service.
Can we get rid of the both right before disproportionate BIPOC resident ridership? Or if that's intended to be combined with the next comma, then
It's a
say.
holdover typo that it was correct to remove. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Yep.
You just want to remove both?
Yep, so then it would just read serves it. Yep, perfect.
Okay, so generally overall, we're going to be ready to vote here, but to take Alyssa's comment about just any changes, thoughts about the entire package, have at it now. Right, so I think we're ready for roll call, Millicent.
Okay. Aaron?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Armand?
Abstain.
Ann Booty?
Aye.
Ann Miller?
Aye.
Deanna?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Janice?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Jesse?
Abstain.
Jordan?
Abstain.
Cadence?
Aye.
Matthew Hendricks?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Steve? Steve? Okay, Alyssa?
I will abstain.
Great, we have 11 yes and 4 abstentions.
And that's it for the engineering report.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you everyone who worked on the resolution and provided feedback. I'm excited about the comments. That is the end of our scheduled agenda. So now I am going to move us into announcements, and it sounds like folks have several things to share or have some brief discussion about during our announcements. So I will turn it over to the group. Dan Miller, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I have 3, but I'm just going to do one and then give room for somebody else. And it was brought to my attention this past few weeks by a member of the public that that the parking around the Hennepin County Plaza had been removed, the bike parking. And Chris helped me out with this, and we found out that it was indeed the parking that was by the transit station that was gone. And we had several back and forths, and this week my bike ride was to go out and take a look at parking conditions on down there, as well as up the first street and the Whittier-Lindale Bikeway and the Midtown Greenway. So I saw a whole bunch of stuff that kind of got me going. And anyways, what was interesting that not only was there no parking at the Hennepin County Plaza where there's traditionally been parking, and it's the reason for it being removed has been likely for winter maintenance or possibly for the Chauvin trial that just never got back. But in the process, I went down to 4th Street where we'd usually all park, right? And all the parking with the reconstruction down there was removed, and a new bank has been added to the 3rd and 4th corner. I would imagine 5 posts, if that. And I went over to City Hall, or to the new Public Services building, and kind of was disappointed to see the amount of bike parking in front of the building, and that there was more reserved on the sides of the building that actually could be, I think, would be unsafe to use both sides because they're so close to the drive lanes. So I've talked to both Chris and Jordan about this, and they've both been very helpful. And the word has gotten out to the Hennepin County facilities that the stuff will come back this spring, that there are plans in the works to add more parking to the front of the Public Services Center, and as well as on the 4th Street. There's 3 things going on here. Hennepin County, you got the new Public Service building, and then you got the Minneapolis Municipal Building Commission. That's the 3rd item. And I tell you, whatever spring is, when we go back in person and you go to try to find biking there, or anybody that's trying to get there for public, you're going to be scratching your head about what you're doing. So I think people have investigated this as best as we can, and I think that it may be something that is worth having on the 5Es committee, and having some of these people come and talk to us about this, because I just I was shocked. I was really where we always parked on 4th. I mean, there's just nothing. You couldn't fit. You'd be gone. So for the public visiting that whole government center, Hennepin County, Minneapolis, and the federal, there's not a lot of parking down there, and we should really be opening up with new visions to getting people to those locations. That's it. So just a thought for something for a future 5E to keep track on this. See if we can help out. Thank you.
I think that would be a great discussion. I actually did a bike ride with a public works staffer along 4th while that project was, while everything was being constructed. And at that time, the verbal conversation we had indicated that all the bike parking would go back. It had not been installed. And so I'm discouraged to hear this. This is something that was on my radar during the construction phase, but not after, because I was expecting it to come back. So would really love if we could find some time on a 5Es agenda to talk about that. I see Chris has a hand raised.
Yeah, just quickly, one thing that the municipal building person said for City Hall is that they are still planning to install more on 4th. So I don't know exactly the extent of that, but there are plans to put more back in. I don't know if that completely goes back to what it was before, like you were saying, Alyssa, which was your understanding of what they had said. So I can at least ask what that next implementation phase looks like, and when it's going to happen, and how much, and stuff like that.
That would be great. And it occurs to me a little too late in this conversation that as someone who served on CLIC, I'm familiar with the Municipal Building Commission, but there might be members here who are not at all familiar with that. Chris or Dan, would you like to give a little bit of an explanation of who they are? Because they don't come up very often. We're talking about the county and the city and the state a lot, but not the Municipal Building Commission.
I think you probably know more than I do. They just ended up on an email chain with me, so I don't know much else, but feel free to jump in, either of you.
They take care of City Hall. So the all the improvements from air conditioning and heat to elevators to the outside of the building to you name it. So it's that's their territory, and they've been involved recently with before George Floyd's murder. They were already starting to talk about security improvements, where they'll be locking down Fifth Moore, as well as actually the entrance. They'll be driving people to the 4th Street entrance, and There'll be more closures it'll be more difficult to get around City Hall than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think they've done some amount of work too. They're like a joint. I think the Municipal Building Commission is like a joint city and Hennepin County venture.
Yes. Yep.
So
what's difficult about this, and Jordan has doubled back on this thing, and they said stuff was going to come out this spring, but you've got kind of one group, NBC in one group, then you got the new building public services center in another group, and you got Hennepin County in a third. And okay, what's spring? When will we see this actually happen? If I mean, I can see this extending well past summer, and then if it gets up, we're lucky. So it would be nice to put some steam in this to know that we're not shorthanded before we are. And yeah. So I think that maybe getting somebody from the Public Services Building that could answer these questions to us in the NBC, and not putting Chris on the spot because he's done what I think he can do at the moment, but it'd be worth us weighing in on it, and you will find out about what's going on when we get back to meeting in person.
Well, it sounds like there's a good amount here that we can talk about. Maybe we can coordinate with Heather as the 5Es co-chair who's on the call today to figure out how to bring this to 5Es. So I'm not seeing anybody who's raising hands on this particular issue. We're in announcements, so we're a little less formal maybe. Phil, if you want to bring some comments, and then I know Dan has other announcements. Other folks might have other announcements.
Yeah, just I think also, I think maybe if worthy of 5E's discussion would be, I'm just imagining that since we know bike walk transit road projects get funded from a number of sources, I'm just sort of wondering about infrastructure money that just may parachute in, and is it possible that that in the flurry of sort of spending infrastructure money, might we miss out on opportunities to do some bike walk transit stuff? So it's really more sort of a question. Maybe it's not an issue, but it feels like it might be something to put on 5Es to touch on.
Yeah. I think it probably warrants a fair amount of discussion. I think to have an effective discussion, we probably need to have some outside presenters. Off the top of my head, I don't know who those folks might be, right? But the money is going to flow through MnDOT, probably through the Metropolitan Council as an agency that has previously been prepared to accept and distribute federal dollars. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot there. We could probably have a 2-hour discussion about just that if we wanted to.
Yeah, like you, it's like, I mean, there's obviously, Met councils, state. I don't know. I just, I guess the worry is, having seen this happen at the state level, money flows through sources that weren't available, and they flow through channels, and we miss out. So. All right.
Phil, I'll add, like, I can maybe do some digging or just like education if we do a 5E item about some of the things that we are pursuing that's coming out of that money, and like different grants at the federal level, and all the stuff Alyssa mentioned is also accurate. And regional solicitation probably will have more money.
That's another one, right?
Or different things like that. So at the very least, to kick that off, I could share some of what I know or some of what we're kind of pursuing.
Sounds great, Chris. Thank you.
I think that would be a great starting point, and also would, this will be an ongoing conversation, I think, over the next probably number of years, and that feels like a good place to start the conversation. So
it's probably a good primer for new members and existing members anyway, just on all the different funding sources that can come into play.
There are so many of them. It's like we made it confusing on purpose. Well, thanks, Phil. Other announcements or discussion items that folks have? I will just add that the open street dates for 2022 have been announced. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but per usual, it kicks off with Lyndale as the first Sunday in June and concludes, I think, in late September or early October. So looking forward to hopefully seeing some of you all biking around for open streets once it's actually summer and has stopped snowing. Dan Miller?
Yeah. I, by chance, was invited to a MnDOT webinar, not a webinar, but a project introduction for Highway 55 resurfacing, which is going to happen this spring. And this is going from downtown 7th and 8th all the way up to 62. And this was a public meeting, and I just listened in, and there wasn't a lot of information provided about pedestrian improvements across. What's going to happen with them? Is there a chance for improvements with pedestrian crossings across Hiawatha? And I didn't get a very good. I didn't get an answer, any answers that were satisfying to me. And I think that this would be good to reach out to them, to talk with them about this, see if they could come to a BAC meeting to address crossing Hiawatha. They are talking about doing crack replacements or some repairs to the Hiawatha Trail that runs along that. It'd be an interesting conversation to just, my memories is Central Avenue up in my neighborhood was redone 2 years ago. And we had conflicts. The only conflict zone crossing in Central Avenue was up on St. Anthony Parkway across Central Avenue. And they came through and resurfaced that thing and never came back. And then when they did the pedestrian crossings, or all these wonderful wide pedestrian crossings that crossed Central, they came and they pasted a 6-foot thing right on top of the thing, and didn't pay attention to the new crossings that were built for the new signals that were put in the previous year in conjunction with MnDOT. They just traced over the old crossings, and it just was really, really, it didn't treat the street well. And I think that, we just got the thing at 28th, and 26th wasn't addressed. It's something that would be worth hearing more about. Thank you.
I don't know off the top of my head, again, who it would be the right person to ask, but I think it's definitely worth asking. So I think we can follow up on that.
Aaron Tagg is directing it.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, are you specifically asking about someone coming from MnDOT or someone coming from the city for the project itself?
From MnDOT.
Okay. Yeah. Aaron Tagg, I can talk with Aaron Tagg to see what we can do for that. He was at that meeting that you were at?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I'd say he'd be the one to answer your question. So,
yeah.
But I'll dig into it a little bit more. I know that there are some. I believe there are some minor ADA improvements.
Right.
And some crossing improvements, but not. There definitely were some missed opportunities in that project. But we can do a follow up too.
I think it's just worth catching them before they go back out there. I mean, it's going to happen fast. It's they're looking to be done with by midsummer up to, I think, between downtown and 31st, and then they're going to tackle the rest of the way after that. And I mean, when they came in Central Avenue, what they could have done, had somebody been thinking about it, it would have been just a different experience. And I think there's some chances here to pay attention to some things that can happen within the scope of this project. If they're willing to listen.
Well, Dan and Jesse, let's follow up and figure out which agenda this might live on, and what the discussion we want to have is. So, any other announcements? We might still end early.
I've got one more, and this is a happy one.
Okay.
I just got notice that the last part of the Weber Parkway, Weber 44 Reconstruction County is going to get completed this summer and spring. And part of that is something which we worked on when I was a very new member of the BAC. And it was a small little improvement that I really consider one of the big things that I may have had something to do with. And that is that there will be a shared use path going between Weber Parkway down to 41st Avenue, which is the connection to 2nd and the Upper Harbor. It also will connect the Grand Rounds over the Camden Street Bridge. So this is a big deal, and it's finally happening, and I just wanted to share that.
And it's nice to be able to celebrate our work. It takes a long time for for ideas and suggestions to become reality. So thanks for giving us something to celebrate, Dan. And thanks for all your work on that. All right, any other announcements or things folks want to discuss? One more long, awkward pause. All right, not seeing any raised hands, not seeing any folks come off mute. I will call us adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for all your comments and suggestions at today's meeting. It was really great to connect with all of you. I am looking forward to potentially seeing some of you in person sometime in the next 4 to 12